Yeah, so you could add some oats to something like this just to vary up the texture and add some extra nutrition. You could also add a little pinch or two of any of the flavoured soups that you happen to have, and that'll add some extra flavour. And then you can just cook these up any variety of ways, from a skillet to a over the top of a fire, or a public barbecue, or whatever works for you. So I just thought I'd add some pasta and then use some of the laksa to make a kind of a gravy-like sauce to go with the pasta. I just thought I'd give that a go. So I've just rolled these up, these nice flats. Basically it's a damper made out of the self-raising flour and water, and then I've just added a little bit of the laksa seasoning, maybe half a teaspoon or so, just to give it a little bit of extra flavour. So now I'm going to stretch these out into noodles. Okay, so I ran out of time where I was doing the camping cooking, so I'm just going to show you cooking up some of that spaghetti here. This can be done over a campfire, it's not an issue. It can be done over boiling water, anywhere that you can boil water. I mean, that could be a public barbecue. That could be over the top of some kind of hiking kit that you've got that you can work with. You know, we were talking about mess kits. You know, whatever the case may be. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just making some pasta. It's nothing fancy, there's nicer ways to make it, that's for sure, but this will do. So I'm just boiling it up, and this one has the laksa included in it just for a little bit of extra flavour. Okay, so that's just waiting for a flavourful sauce to go over the top of it, but that's all al dente. And here's some more that I'm just making up. Basically I've just cut it up like that, and then I'm pinching it in the middle like so. So from that to pinched, and then I just flatten each side so you can kind of see what I'm doing there, just for a bit of variety. Okay, so if you took some of this beef cuppa soup and mashed in with some red kidney beans for that nice kind of texture, you could add that to the chopped tomato, and you could turn that into a nice sauce to go over the top of the pasta. That's one option. Another option would be to cook up some of this onion in some of your very precious cooking fat. And once that onion is beautifully caramelized, you could add it to some of the chopped tomatoes. You could add whichever of the beans that you choose. You can separate them, or you can just make them as the soup mix comes, just to give it that extra bit of nutrition and texture. You might not want to put the soup mix in. You might decide that you just want to have it with just the onion caramelized all lovely, and then some chopped tomatoes. Another option is to have a cold pasta salad with caramelized onion and beetroot. So a little bit of the beef soup for flavouring. The chopped tomatoes simmered down so they've got that really nice rich flavour going on, and some caramelized onion, the red onion, that'd be a lovely option. I mean, the point is, use what you've got and work with your personal taste and figure out what works for you, because everybody's different. But these are just some of the options that you could work with. I suppose another one would be the red onion and the beetroot. Oh no, I already said that. That's something to be mindful of if you're making something like this. That margarine, that fairy margarine, it's animal-based fats. So it has a very animal kind of flavour to it. So if you're missing meat because you can't afford it, it's very good for that. If that's not your cup of tea, it's hard to find other options for fats, so you've got to shop around, you've got to see what's on sale, see what deals you can find to make do with what you've got. In this case, it certainly adds a certain flavour to this. Now, one thing that might surprise you, when you're used to having plenty of access to very cheap, readily available fats, you don't realise how bad it can be when you're on an extremely tight budget. If you don't have a pantry, if you don't have any of those basics that you build up over time, for whatever number of reasons, what can happen is that you can find yourself suddenly craving certain things, such as fats. Now, normally that may not be an issue for you, but don't be surprised if you're on an extremely tight budget if you don't find yourself craving certain things. Carbs are generally the cheapest thing to come across. Carbs and beans and lentils and that kind of stuff. But you'll start craving fats. And this particular shopping trip that I did, there's not very many fats in it at all. And the reason for that is because they're expensive to set up. Once you've got them, you don't need a lot, like a little bit goes a long way. If you can buy a 3-litre bulk container of whatever oil of choice, that goes a long way and it lasts a long time. You know, that can last you, if you buy that on half price, for a pittance you can have 6-12 months worth of oil for yourself, and it's no big deal. But if you're living out of your car and you've lost your pantry, or for whatever other reason you don't have access to a pantry full of just the staples, then even something as simple as a basic fat to cook with and to flavour the food can actually become a hurdle.
Cream corn? Thank you. And for the entree today? Here it comes. Steady. We have liver or fish? I didn't hear you say that. Because it isn't possible. It's inhuman to serve the same food day after day. The Geneva Convention prohibits the killing of our taste buds. Is it?
Okay, so what I've done here is I've taken some of that self-raising flour, added some water, and I've made a basic batter. Now, as you can see, it's still got some little lumps in it, which is not ideal. Ideally, you'd like to get those lumps out, but I'm in a hurry, so basically then what we do is we batter some thickly sliced up onion rings. You can see where this is going, can't you? Now, if you have access to a freezer, this is freezable. Once it's deep fried, you can freeze it and reheat it straight out of frozen state, so you don't defrost it, you just reheat it straight from being frozen. So for example, you might put it in the oven if you've got access to an oven, or in the microwave if that's what you've got access to. If you've got a freezer but no actual kitchen, so for example you might have a freezer on a 4-wheel drive or something like that, then you can basically do this up as you would over a campfire or a barbecue. Otherwise you have to make this as you're going to use it, because it won't preserve that well. I mean, it'll preserve for a couple of days. If you make it and it's not a boiling hot car that it's sitting in, it'll be okay for a few days, and then you can reheat it if you don't have the time or the energy to sort of make it on the day. And it's a nice little extra for texture and flavour that you can add to just about any dish, or you can have it as a morale boosting snack. Totally up to you. Okay, so I've just flipped these around and they're simmering away. One thing I will say is if you do find yourself on a budget as tight as $20 a week, if you haven't tried fairy margarine before, look for a different fat as your fat option, because you only get one. And even if it means putting back one of the other items, such as one of the copper soups, as upsetting as that is, if you get this fat and you find out that the taste, which is quite strong, is not to your liking and it just doesn't work for you, then you're stuffed because you've got no fat to work with and you've got no wiggle room. So if you've tried it before, you'll know whether it's right for you or not. It's a very distinct flavour and you either like it or you don't like it. It's really one of those. You can see the deep fried onion rings, or shallow fried onion rings, and French fries of sorts have done well. I'll probably put them in a little bit to do a little bit more reheating closer to when everything else is ready to serve. Okay, so these bits are left over from making the onion rings. So what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to roast them. Same with this, because I just like that roasted flavour. Okay, so just here we've got those onions fried up. I'm going to add some tomato to that and I'm going to do something with that. So I've just added the liquid into a jar with that finely chopped up red onion and the liquid from the can of tomatoes. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just taken an upcycled jar and I've added some finely sliced up red onion, and then I'm going to add some tomato to it. Yeah, there's not very good lighting in here, but hopefully you can see what I've done there. I've just thin sliced some of the potato, put some of that flour and water batter on it, and then I've just been frying it up. I've got that onion there as well, just frying up. So here I've got the beans boiling away. And for a bit of colour variation and flavour variation, I've separated some of the frozen peas and some of the frozen carrots to put with a particular dish. I just think it's nice to have variety of flavour and texture sometimes. When it's all mixed in together, it can get a bit mundane. And another thing I've done is with the leftover flour and water, I've just coated some of the leftover frozen vegetables from the stuff that I separated. There's definitely lots of carrots in this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to deep fry these as the nice little crispy bites to add texture and flavour variety. I've fine chopped up some potato, and what I'm going to do with that potato is I'm going to fry it up to make little potatoey croutons. Okay, so the lighting's not that great for the camera, unfortunately. I'm just frying these little crispy croutons made out of potato, which should be nice. And bubbling away in the background is the lentils. Red kidney beans as well. So they're all cooked up, but I've separated them because I'm going to do something different with them and I wanted the flavour variation. And there's the cute little potatoes I was telling you about.